I just want to share a few thoughts with you today on is the beginning of how the legislature and how the Democrat caucus is going to try and deal with some of the issues that our two teachers brought up. So the first one I want to speak to is really about what's going on with respect to overtesting for all the reasons that we talked about. And as we look around our state in education reform, there was a time in the 90s when we didn't know our performance in schools. And we started testing, and then we had No Child Left Behind. And slowly the pendulum has swung so far where now all we do in our class is basically standardized testing. And it's now testing for testing's sake instead of a means to actual learning and better outcomes. So I feel and I'm confident that what's happening in our schools now is actually detrimental to learning for our children. We are essentially trading off more testing instead of more learning. And because of that, I have a piece of legislation that would regulate basically when we can test and how we can handle opt-out procedures. Senate Bill 34 is going to be in Senator Sapien's Education Committee, and all it does is spell out the guidelines. And I would say the ultimate irony here is that whether you're actually for testing or against testing, this bill is critical because right now there are no rules to the game, if you will, for testing. We can simply test in our schools as much as we want. Now when we layer onto that the additional issue of the money that is spent on testing, there's over $23 million right now spent with out-of-state for-profit corporations to test our children, to use our children as guinea pigs in whatever sort of testing studies they're trying to do. And that's not right, and it's also a waste of taxpayer money.
Right. Senator Keller, different parent groups have come to me and to refuse the test New Mexico and said, if I opt my student out of testing, how do I make sure that there's no repercussions to my student or to me? And then some of the principals have also been afraid. They've said, don't opt your child out because it's against the law and it's going to cause bad things to our school. And so everybody is afraid to opt out at this time. There's a lot of people talking about it, some people who are very brave and went out on a ledge and opted out, but people are afraid of repercussions.
Well, that's exactly why this bill is so important. And this is also the same debate that Texas had, and that's why Texas passed this legislation. So this legislation basically says that if you opt out, you cannot be penalized for graduation. It also says that your school cannot be penalized for ABCDF. This was the other issue from the school's perspective. And it also says that it cannot be used to deal with promotion and retention either. So it gives you those kinds of protections. And again, the schools wanted this as well because they're saying, well, if people start opting out or if they're not opting out, it's going to affect our ABCDF ranking and so forth. So that's exactly what the bill does. And I might also just share, which I forgot to mention, I have some fresh stats on this. 41% of days in our school year are spent testing.